In the year 2000, it was not yet cool to be a nerd. Comic books and their film adaptations were the dominion of smelly outcasts, the type of people who were thought to live solitary lives in the basement of the houses they grew up in, feasting on little more than a diet of fast food and internet pornography. This was, of course, a cruel stereotype, but nevertheless, the sudden and spectacular implosion of the Superman and Batman film franchises, combined with the creative and business struggles of comic book publishers like Marvel, helped create the perception that comic book aficionados were among the lowliest fanboys in all of popular culture. But thanks to the evolution of new film technologies, pop culture was about to undergo a mutation of its own. By the end of the decade, comic book films would be the most successful genre of movies at the box office. Thanks in large part to the X-Men, the geeks would inherit the Earth. Welcome to Superhero Cinema Club, an in-depth exploration of the history of superhero films. I'm Mark Schiff, and joining me as always, it's the Professor X to my Magneto. It's Mike Carnes.
Oh, wow, what an honor. I'm so honored to be that guy. He's amazing. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's clearly that's the dynamic duo, not to reference a different franchise, but, if you're going to do a pair, it's going to be those pairs. I'll put myself in the villain chair in this one. I'm okay with that.
I appreciate that, but, next time we get together, I'm definitely going to play a game of chess with you.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait.
Take it down.
If it wasn't already clear from these references, we are going to be discussing X-Men this season, our third season. Very excited, Mike. It's a season premiere. If you haven't already caught up on our previous seasons, go ahead and check those out. Season 1 is on Superman, the Christopher Reeve films, and Season 2 is on the 90s Batman films. So not the Christopher Nolan ones or the DC EU, but the 90s Batman. So we're doing this chronologically, hence the history part of our introduction. That leads us straight to X-Men is our third series. I'm really, really excited about this one, Mike, for a couple of different reasons. First off, this is our first time to talk about Marvel films, and I'm a Marvel man. Make mine Marvel, as they say. I've obviously read, a decent amount of DC comics over the years, but really just the main guys, Batman, Superman.
Sure.
I'm really not nearly as familiar with the larger lore of DC compared to Marvel, whereas Marvel I feel like I know quite a bit about in the comics and obviously in the various film series. Always been a Marvel guy, so it's really exciting to move on to talk about Marvel stuff. Where's your relationship between DC and Marvel?
DC is like the pantheon of Greek gods almost, Superman to Zeus and Wonder Woman to Athena kind of thing. It's like you could chisel all of these characters into marble statues. Marvel feels a little different than that. It's not like a one-to-one with mythology like that. It's a little more its own thing. And I definitely grew up a Marvel kid, read a lot of Marvel comics, a lot of Spider-Man, some X-Men. I'm pretty familiar with X-Men. I think this may have been the first superhero movie that I saw in the theater was X-Men 1. I'm pretty sure. Came out in 2000. I was 13 years old. So I was definitely the prime age and the prime target audience for this film. And I do remember going to see it in middle school with a buddy of mine. And yeah, this is a pretty special film. I feel like it's the gateway drug to a much larger Marvel anthology.
For sure. We'll get into that some more. But yeah, I was being a little bit older than you. I was a fully grown adult in college in the year 2000. I was through the moon for this movie in terms of excitement and anticipation. I first got into comic books, we talked about last season, via the Batman movie, which came out when I was 10 years old. Just absolutely floored me, blew me away. So I started picking up comic books actually from 7-Eleven back when they used to sell comic books at the 7-Eleven. Batman comics at that time were really dark, just really didn't appeal to me. But I saw this beautiful art on the cover and X-Men, and it just looked really cool, and I got it. And what do you know? I was hooked. That was definitely my gateway drug into comic books was the X-Men. This was when Jim Lee was drawing as the primary artist alongside Chris Claremont. And it was just before the relaunch of the regular X-Men title. There's Uncanny X-Men, and then they split it up into 2 different books and launched with just X-Men. This is, to this day, the biggest selling comic book of all time. My buddy and I, who was really kind of more interested in the collecting and the idea of like making money off of buying comic books,
Sure.
bought all 4 different covers. It's worthless, right? Like that is like, it's the best selling comic book of all time. You can't sell
Everybody's
that.
got it.
Yeah, everyone has it. You can't sell it anywhere else. So
I'd be remiss if we also didn't discuss, by the way, the X-Men animated 90s television show. That was something that I looked forward to every Saturday morning. I was a huge fan of that. I don't think I caught every episode at the time, but definitely tried my best to keep up on the continuing drama of what was happening on that show. I think that that was a great template for this movie. And I know that actually Brian Singer, the director, did say that he watched all 70 something episodes in preparation to like figure out what characters they wanted to put in and which ones would work and which ones would not. All this to say, X-Men was definitely something that I was pretty excited for in the year 2000.
for sure. And along with the Batman animated series, the X-Men animated series on Fox was, I think, a lot of people's gateway into the X-Men universe as a whole. Even if they didn't collect the comics, that show was just such a Saturday morning smash. Even I was kind of getting older, but I still like tuned in to watch it because I just, like I said, I love the X-Men so much. So that was for sure like huge. And I think what's kind of ironic, we'll get into it a little bit more later, but the X-Men animated series theme song is like one of the all-time bangers of superhero. It's not cinema, but in the superhero pantheon, it is definitely one of the top themes. It's
For
certainly
sure.
far more memorable than the music in this movie, I would say. So, yeah, just an iconic show, and I think important gateway for a lot of fans of comic book.
It was so iconic that they opted to use that theme song in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness when introducing Professor X instead of the actual Fox X-Men music that they had used for like 6 movies prior to that. To that.
Yeah, 100%. It's the iconic theme for the X-Men for sure. So, big picture, this season we're going to be covering the 8 main X-Men films. That would be X-Men X2, X-Men The Last Stand, X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, which didn't get the X-Men colon, just Dark Phoenix, and the New Mutants. So this is our biggest season yet. 8 films. We're really excited to get into all of them, and like past seasons, you know, varying quality, I would say, among all of these, which
Sure,
is
yeah.
a stable of long-running franchises. Interesting fact, Mike, that I saw in the research here. If you include the Wolverine solo films and the Deadpool movies, this is the 7th highest grossing film franchise of all time. Over $6 billion in box office, which is astonishing. It's an amazing accomplishment. But it got me thinking, Mike, can you name the other highest grossing film series of
Oh
all time?
god. Well, I was gonna say actually at number 7, that seems a little low for 8 movies. You would think that they would be a little higher ranked just because of the sheer volume of films that they're putting out here. But I would say Harry Potter is definitely one. That's got to be up there.
Harry Potter is number 4.
Harry Potter's number 4. Okay, let's see. The Marvel Cinematic Universe.
That is number 1.
Yeah.
$32 billion over 37 films. Now, I'm going to spoil a little bit. At 6 is Avengers, which falls under that umbrella. So I guess that Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of gets to count that twice, I
Okay.
suppose. So
Sure.
Avengers is just above X-Men. We're looking for 3 more. What do you got?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings is 12, just below.
Oh man, that's too bad. That includes all the Hobbit movies too, I
It
assume, right?
does,
Okay.
yes.
I can't think of any more off the top of my head. Just go ahead and give them to me.
You did well. Spider-Man is number 2. $11 billion in grosses.
Okay.
I'm a little disappointed you didn't get this next one. Star Wars, Mike.
Oh, of
Star
course.
Wars.
Well, yeah, what's wrong with
Of
me?
course.
Yeah.
10 billion, 400 million.
I feel like I've moved past Star Wars at this point in my life, honestly. I'm getting older, you know, they're putting out bad content after bad content. It's pushed to the back of my mind.
Fair enough. At number 5, I mentioned Harry Potter Wizarding World is number 4. Number 5, James Bond. James Bond
Wow,
is
the
at 5.
only
Yeah.
one of the few that's not superhero related.
Yep, exactly. And then, as I mentioned, Avengers 6 and then X-Men 7. So overall, we're talking about a film franchise that, is only topped by 6 other franchises in terms of IP of all time. Batman is 10, and I'm not even seeing Superman on this list. It's really like this is up to this point in history, the most iconic superhero franchise. Spider-Man's going to be coming around soon, but you kind of alluded to it before, Mike. This was really the movie, I would say, that kind of kicks off the superhero revolution of the 21st century. I think there's a couple reasons why. So, first of all, this is the first movie that relies very heavily on CGI. You look at the Batman movies, especially the later two, there's a touch of CGI there, but the thing that it differentiates X-Men, right, is that you actually needed computer generated imagery to make these films, right? You're not really going to be able to do certain visual effects unless you have that kind of technology. It would just look horrible if they tried to do it in practical sense, right? So it kind of needed for the technology to catch up. And I think in that respect, it's hugely important because CGI, computer imagery, whatever you want to call it, it's instrumental, right, to the form of superhero films. I mean, we wouldn't be able to watch these superheroes perform their incredible acts and their various powers, right, unless we had something to assist them. There's just no way to duplicate those types of effects. So I think in that respect, this is pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, you look at something like Infinity War, where the majority of shots in that movie are either CGI driven or entirely CGI. It's like every shot there is a green screen. We have the main bad guy is a CGI character. It's just the tip of the iceberg here with X-Men. And even something as simple as Wolverine's claws, coming out of his hand, like a lot of people don't think about that. That's a CGI shot. And in any case, visual effects started to change direction around this time of the century in 2000. We had Star Wars that came out in 1999. First Lord of the Rings came out in 2001, which completely changed the game entirely. Long story short, X-Men was definitely on the forefront of the CG.
Revolution for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CG revolution. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first superhero film that really requires that. But I think beyond that, one of the things that really sets the X-Men apart and in a lot of ways set up the Marvel films is the fact that it's ultimately an ensemble film, right? And it's not just about Batman or Superman specifically. It's about the X-Men, Wolverine being the primary character here, but I think it's a true ensemble film. And one of the things that's fun about the X-Men is looking at all the various characters and kind of deciding who's your favorite, who do you relate to the most, which one do you like, which one can't you stand? Usually the answer is Cyclops. Um, it's definitely, I was actually thinking about it. It's almost like a boy band where it's like you'd pick your favorite. Ooh, I like that one. Like I like that
Uh-huh.
one, And I
Wolverine's the
think
cute one.
exactly. And I think certainly the MCU owes a huge debt to that because when it gets into even the individual movies are kind of loaded with a bunch of different supporting characters and other, superheroes. It's not just the main character, but I think the Avengers in particular owes a real debt to the X-Men in terms of, oh, it's so much more fun to bring together all these different people
Yeah.
and look at their power sets. So that leads us to our first kind of question of the day, which is among all of the different characters in the original X-Men film here, who has the best and the worst mutant powers? Go ahead with who has got the best mutant power in your opinion?
I think it's Magneto. I think it's especially knowing from the comics and the TV show and later movies what he can actually do with that. It's not just warping barbed metal or iron gates. We start small in this movie. We see him do those little things. The biggest thing that he does is generate the radiation field at the Statue of Liberty, right? That's something that's kind of all encompassing. Maybe the coolest example of his powers is when he takes all the like 50 guns that are pointed at him and turns them against the cops that are pointing at him. But knowing what I know down the line, Magneto is so powerful he can tap into the magnetic field of the earth itself, which allows him to fly, allows him to create force fields. I've seen him actually like reverse the polarity of the earth. he becomes super powerful in that respect. So I think out of all the mutants that are in this specific movie, Magneto I think is overall the most powerful and just kind of the coolest power set.
It's it's probably Magneto. I want to throw out another one just because I think it's kind of an underrated one, but Mystique has like pretty powerful. You could sneak anywhere you want. You could go and be the most famous celebrity in the world and get into all the clubs and do all the bad things that you would want to do. You could impersonate high-powered politicians, which she does. I mean, that's like the power to shapeshift is actually like one of the more kind of astonishing and uncanny abilities, if you will, that the X-Men have.
You sound like Senator Kelly in this movie. What's to stop her from going right into a bank vault?
Exactly. Exactly. As far as the worst, when you think about this question sincerely, like there's actually a lot of options. It would kind of suck to be a lot of these people. Cyclops can never look anyone in the eye. And if you imagine you're in his shoes, you're kind of constantly paranoid about, am I going to just blast someone's face off if I look at him wrong? Like, that's not really
How does he
a
sleep?
fun power.
Is my question. How does he sleep?
There you
Does he
go.
have
He's
to
got to
sleep
have a
with one
visor
eye
on.
on?
Yeah. Or
That's
he's
so
got a sleep mask on, I
very
guess. But then he
uncomfortable,
would blow through that, I guess, if he opened his eyes. So
right?
it's tough. That being said, I think the winner in this film, it's Toad. I
It's
mean,
definitely
Toad,
Toad.
it's Toad, right? Like, I
Yeah, for
mean,
sure.
ugh, you've got this long tongue. You shoot a mucus that like suffocates people. It's all very gross with him. I mean, he does have some cool martial arts moves. I think that's more of his own personal training that he's put in at the gym and all of that. So I'm not sure if that's connected to his mutant ability as a Toad. He can climb walls, I guess. But man, that's rough. It's rough to be Toad.
Toad, played by Ray Park, who is most famously known for Mark.
Darth Maul
There you
in
go.
The Phantom Menace. Yeah, of course. One of the things about the X-Men that's fun is like kids have been having this debate for decades, literally. Like, who has the best powers? What would be the worst power? What would you not want to have? Like, it's these are really fun debates, and I think the X-Men kind of embody that idea of, man, what a fantastical world we're in. There's all these different people. And one of the things I really enjoy about this film, Singer does a great job, is like combining different powers. So it's like you have Rogue, who can't physically touch anyone, probably number two after Toad. Like that would really suck if you could
That's
never
debatable.
physically. I don't know.
As an introvert, stay away from me.
Fair enough. But she goes into Wolverine's room when he's having a nightmare and ends up getting claws through her chest. But thankfully, she can take his healing factor, fix herself up right quick, much to everyone's horror. But, combining, oh, it would be cool if this power set interacted with that power set. That's what I think is one of the really standout things about the filmmaking in this film. We'll get into that a little bit more, but just a quick overview on the comics, Mike, because for people who may not know, X-Men launched all the way back in September of 1963, created by the two iconic Marvel legends, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. One thing that was interesting, I didn't realize this, was that it wasn't really popular back in the 60s compared to the big titles of the time, specifically Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and the Avengers. Those were really the big ones, the Incredible Hulk, like all these other books outsold the X-Men to the point that it actually got canceled in
Oh,
1970. They just stopped making new X-Men. They would show up, characters would show up in certain things, but there wasn't an X-Men title. They kind of slowly relaunched it. And then a young man by the name of Chris Claremont came along, and the X-Men would never be the same. So Chris Claremont, as much as Stan Lee and Jack Kirby deserve credit for the original concept, Chris Claremont is kind of like the shepherd of the X-Men. He's the one that introduced iconic characters like Storm, like Nightcrawler, like Colossus, the giant-sized X-Men, where the new team has to go save the original X-Men, was really the game changer, to the point that right now, I was also surprised to learn this, Mike. X-Men is the best-selling comic book of all time. It's sold more than Superman, than Batman, than Spider-Man. All of these other heroes that we think about, X-Men have outsold them all, which I thought was pretty interesting. So what are your thoughts about Chris Claremont and just kind of the journey of the X-Men there?
I think that's really interesting. Obviously, I wasn't alive in the 60s or 70s, but from my perspective, it kind of seems like that the X-Men are pretty heavy-handed, especially during the golden age of comics there. of being a metaphor for racism. And oh, they're different from us. They're freaks. They're outcasts, but they still, what sets them apart is that they choose to still save the world that constantly shuns them. And so I think that Chris Claremont was able to elevate them beyond something that was so heavy-handed in their message, and show that it's we can actually do something interesting with all these characters, and we can give them all their own individual backstories, and it doesn't just have to be the team as a character, and that we can split it up a little bit and give everybody their own unique arc. And it was what he did with that eventually derived the 90s animated series and created all these characters that we've come to know and love, like Storm and Nightcrawler and Cyclops and Wolverine. Claremont, I think, was definitely the 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 goose laying the golden egg here for the X-Men franchise.
Yeah, I just watched a really good documentary. It's available on Sling Free Stream if you are so inclined to watch. It's called Chris Claremont's X-Men, and it kind of gets into his history and with the book and just what he was trying to do. And it's really good. I think it's interesting to hear you say that the metaphor is a little heavy-handed. I agree with you in that he was able to open up the stories to a whole lot of new different types of characters and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think what his legacy is kind of making all of these different characters and that metaphor just so much more rich. I didn't realize this, but Magneto, in terms of his backstory as being a Holocaust survivor and someone who, was oppressed and kind of had his motivations come from that place, that was all Chris Claremont. Prior to that, he was just sort of this generic villain who just wanted to battle the X-Men and didn't agree with Professor Xavier, and he gave him that whole backstory. And I think that really made Magneto, I would say, arguably the most compelling villain in all of Marvel. I don't know if you want to debate that, but like I was kind of thinking about it. In terms of films, Thanos is an amazing villain. There have been a couple in Marvel. I think Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2 is amazing, but I think Magneto might be the best. One of the things that I enjoy about X-Men is that you can see both sides, right? You can see Magneto's argument that they were just going to continue to hate and fear you. We're not going to talk about the comics because the comics really get into exploring this in so much more ways, and there's so many twists and turns in terms of the journey there of the X-Men and humanity. But the beauty of the X-Men to me is that you can kind of see Magneto's like, yeah, maybe he's right. Like they will continue to hate and fear you. They're never going to really accept you. They're always going to be either jealous or scared of you because of your abilities. And
Yeah, and you
so
and you have the capability to make the world better, so why not use it is the biggest thing. Like, you have these powers, be it through violence, you can make the world a better place, but it's gonna require a sacrifice. So, um,
exactly.
yeah, so it is a
Yeah,
difficult standpoint. Like, yeah, did we want to make the world better, but do we want to build it on blood? That's kind of where it comes down to. It's like, yeah, you still get that motive, but how do you execute? I think he cited Killmonger a season or two ago, and he's definitely one. Thanos, of course. Thanos has a little bit of a hole in his plot, I think, which is that, why don't, if you've got the ability to half of all of life in the universe, why don't you just double the resources in the universe instead?
save it for I've Got Questions season 7. Like, come
Season
on.
7, yeah, for sure. But yeah, Magneto's definitely compelling. I think the most interesting villains are definitely the ones that you can relate to and you can understand their perspective, as opposed to just being mustache twirling cartoon characters. So
Well, with our general discussion about the X-Men out of the way, let's jump into our first category, Mike, the Tale of the Cape. So X-Men was released on July 14th, 2000, 2 days after the premiere screening at Ellis Island. That's kind of fun. Now, the journey of X-Men to the big screen was a long and laborious one. It started actually back in the late 80s when Stan Lee was very interested in trying to get these films off the ground, and Mr. Lurking around the edges of superhero cinema but never actually made a superhero film, James Cameron was going to be on board as producer with his then wife, Catherine Bigelow, famously Oscar winning for The Hurt Locker, on to direct. That fell apart due to studio issues and a variety of reasons, but it took a while for everything to get off the ground. And in fact, the X-Men animated series played an instrumental role in the film actually getting made, because once the show came out, they were really like, oh, this could be a viable IP for us. And so Lauren Schuler Donner, whose name may be familiar from her husband Richard Donner, bought the film rights and brought on a series of writers to try to knock out the script. Now, there's a whole other podcast, I'm sure, about just the writing of X-Men and how many different people had taken a pass at the script. Joss Whedon had been handed a rewrite. Ed Solomon was on there. John Logan, James Schamus. It was really a lot of different people. However, in the end, and there was some arbitration from the Writers Guild of America, the script is credited specifically to a one David Hayter. Now, that's a pretty awesome name for someone who went through a lot to get his name attached to the film. Story by Tom DeSanto and Bryan Singer. So there's a lot of different people who worked on the script. I think a lot of different ideas and probably some of their jokes and individual things snuck through in the final version. But Mike, why don't you give us a little primer on Mr. David Hayter?
Well, David Hayter is iconic for one specific reason. And do you know what I'm alluding to?
I do not.
Okay. Have you heard of the video game series Metal Gear Solid?
I have.
David Hayter is the voice of Solid Snake himself. So
how about
you got
that?
Solid Snake writing X-Men 1. David Hayter is my guy, man. Metal Gear.
Yeah, what a legend. Yeah, looking him up a little bit, yeah, it's pretty interesting, his career, not only as a writer, but as you said, a voice actor and deep in the video game lore as well. So he gets the credit, and then obviously they needed to hire a director. So early on, they brought on one Bryan Singer. Now, Bryan Singer is, at this point, somewhat of a persona non grata, I would say, in Hollywood. If you're interested in our in-depth thoughts around this topic, you can listen to the intro of our Superman Returns episode. We're just not going to get into the personal life of Bryan Singer, the specific accusations against him. We are trying to focus on the art and not the artist, but nevertheless, we both obviously think that these accusations are true and they do seem to be very credible. He really seems like a scumbag who maybe should be in jail, but so it goes. He would not be the last of the problematic creatives involved in superhero films.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him a lot this season, so moving on.
He was coming off of the huge success of The Usual Suspects, which came out in 1995.
What a crazy next move after Usual Suspects, by the way. He goes from that to X-Men. That's not very common for someone to go from an Oscar-winning, pretty brilliant crime drama to a superhero movie. That's not really something that you see very often, except for, like, I don't know, Nolan, maybe?
Yeah, this is true. However, there was one film in between, Apt Pupil from 1998. And I believe Ian McKellen was also in that film. So that was where they first worked together, was in Apt Pupil. But yeah, I mean, it definitely did not seem like he was, the kind of guy that would be interested in making a superhero film. And that's doubly so given the fact that he had no interest in comic books. He really wasn't a comic book guy. He hadn't read any Marvel comics, and famously, he forbade the cast from reading comic books on set, much to their anger. Yeah, they snuck him in, and did it anyway, which, what a lame move. But yeah, he really wanted to focus on the central metaphor of prejudice, bigotry, and hatred towards the other. I think that's communicated well in the film. And I actually think that he did a pretty amazing job at this. And as much as anything, you can really credit Bryan Singer for the launch of superhero cinema and bringing more of an adult sensibility, and I would even say like a more, let's say, thematically rich style into this. Singer deserves a lot of credit for that. I think the other person who worked on this film that deserves a ton of credit and is no doubt the man who is the biggest name in superhero films of all time is a man by the name of Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige was a assistant to Lauren Schuler Donner, and I think he has a producer credit on this. I'm not sure exactly what his title was, but he was the one that helped sneak in the comic books for the cast and crews. He's a guy that knew comic books like the back of his hand. And I think as the guy who's, responsible for the MCU and has really overseen all of those projects. I mean, Feige is the one, right? Like, if there's one guy at this point that we want to put our hat on for who is responsible, it's Kevin Feige, and this is where he got his start.
Definitely. He's George Lucas for superhero movies, basically.
100%. And in fact, we mentioned it in our Batman and Robin episode, but he actually credited that film as being so disastrous that it gave them the opportunity to kind of start fresh and go in a different direction when they kind of reintroduced a new style of superhero filmmaking, one that was far more grounded. And I would also say, Mike, I think Lauren Schuler Donner had experience working on the Superman film, and I think that kind of carries over in the tone of X-Men as well. One thing about this film that, rewatching it, it's really not that heavy on action. There's definitely set pieces, but it's not, even compared to X2 and subsequent entries, there's just not as much action. Now, the pacing is a lot faster than the deliberately slow Superman pacing. It's not exactly like that style, but I would say, it wasn't completely shocking to see the DNA of the original Superman films here on X-Men. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I was going to say the same thing. Surprisingly little action, especially in the first half. It felt kind of quaint comparatively to what we see today, especially something Infinity War is like every single scene is an action scene in that movie. Spider-Man No Way Home has multiple action scenes, throughout that movie. It's like we've already have all these characters in the MCU set up and established, so we already know everything about them. There's very little room for character growth and arc, and those movies just kind of let the fists do the talking, and this movie didn't have that. We had to learn about these characters, especially just the normal audience member who doesn't know who Wolverine or Cyclops or Storm or Jean Grey or Professor X are. So we had to learn a lot about them, and there's a lot of characters to set up, and so because of that there's a lot of non-action scenes that I think we'll get into.
Now, the film was distributed by 20th Century Fox, so this is also the first really major superhero film that wasn't made by Warner Brothers. We should also shout out here, we're not blind to Blade, right? We love Blade. We almost did a little Blade mini season last season. We will still come back to Blade at some point.
We will.
I just think that at the end of the day, Blade is more of a vampire action film than it is a superhero film. Again, I'm looking forward to talking about those movies. I love those movies. I love the filmmakers behind those movies. So there's a lot to get into there. 1998 was the first Blade film. So he definitely helped pave the way for sure. But really, at the end of the day, this X-Men franchise was really the next big superhero franchise after the disastrous crash out of Batman. And this was really 20th Century Fox first foray into that genre. I guess just one other kind of quick credit we should probably mention here. We alluded to it earlier. Michael Kamen did the score for this film. Michael Kamen, a lot of great credits, including Die Hard, which I love the score for Die Hard. I think he did an amazing job in that film. It's actually one of the first things I think about, like the horns just blaring when Hans Gruber is falling out of the window. It's such a sick musical moment. Just not that memorable, though. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you had two of the most iconic film themes ever. Certainly the two most iconic superhero film themes in Superman and Batman previous to this. So I think it was tough. And then he's also in the shadow, as we mentioned, of the X-Men TV show theme song. So after the last two franchises we discussed and how iconic those film scores were, I was just kind of like, wow, I couldn't hum anything from this. I couldn't tell you anything. It services the story really well. It's very atmospheric, like re-listening to it, but it's just not nearly as memorable as the Danny Elfman Batman theme or the John Williams Superman.
Apparently, Bryan Singer did try to reach out to John Williams, though, to do it, but he wasn't available because he was doing Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what he could have done. John Williams don't miss, so, would have been interesting. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of one area where this movie was lacking relatively to the others that we've discussed. So
it's not bad. I just think I do think of that like that does stick in my head a little bit, but yeah, it's just comparatively, it's got some big shoes to fill. Who knows?
100%. Now, one of the other kind of production things that are sort of interesting about this film, it seems like most of the main characters were pretty well set in terms of who they got and wanted to get. I think specifically Patrick Stewart as Professor X is like the most spot on casting. It's got to be like one of the all time. Just go out and get Patrick Stewart. He is Professor X. Like he
That's what
looks
they did.
exactly like him. Yeah.
That's exactly what they did. They were like,
Yeah.
"This is what everybody knows and wants," and it had been the rumor a long time that he was going to do it anyway, and that they just were like, "Well, let's just make it happen because he's perfect, and he is
Yeah.
perfect."
Yeah. Now, Magneto, I think compared to the comics, I feel like Magneto is like a little bit younger in the comics and certainly like more jacked and ripped than like Ian McKellen. Nevertheless, I think McKellen does a really good job and he brings that gravitas of I'm doing this for my reasons. I have really specific reasons. You're not going to convince me otherwise. They kind of needed someone with his, let's say, like theater training and his sort of heft of him to pull it off, but it was somewhat of a departure. The big one we got to get into is Wolverine. And this is like, Mike, somewhere in the multiverse, the version exists that has Glenn Danzig as Wolverine. And again,
No,
this is
why does
absolutely
that
perfect
exist?
casting. Now, Glenn Danzig looks like Wolverine. He is Wolverine. He's short and ripped and pissed off. And I'm pretty sure he actually was born with claws that can come out of his body. I can't confirm that, but I think I heard a rumor that he actually has that. So I don't know.
Professor.
Professor, what do you want from me? I'm a big Danzig fan,
Sorry,
Misfits
everybody.
more specifically. So I would love to see the alternate multiverse version of this film with Glenn Danzig just to see.
But can
Really,
he act?
that's the big question here, Mike. That's the big question. The real pivot, however, is for a man. Do you know his name? He's somewhat been lost to time as far as an actor goes, but he was originally cast as Wolverine and then had to drop out due to Mission Impossible 2.
I don't know this. No, tell me.
Dougray Scott. Dougray Scott has had a successful career. He is an Emmy Award winner. He's been in a number of TV shows and other things, but he was cast as Wolverine. They were all set to roll, and he had to drop out. This is like one of the biggest what ifs in terms of casting I can imagine. If you look at a photo of the guy, he really doesn't look like him.
No, not at all.
But that's also because I think it's inextricable in my mind, Hugh Jackman and Wolverine. For basically everyone in America, if not the entire world, the first time we ever saw Hugh Jackman's face, he's donning the iconic Wolverine chops. It's probably the best superhero casting of all time. If you want to set aside, there's two other contenders, I would say. Christopher Reeve as Superman, extremely iconic. And then clearly Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man was a massive home run.
We talk about
But
this in our very first episode, and you forgot Hugh Jackman. And when you asked me, I was like, I think you're talking about Hugh Jackman as Wolverine because he's
yeah,
so amazing in that role.
yeah, it's
Um,
absolutely iconic. And yet he basically got the job because Dougray Scott got hurt in a motorcycle accident while filming Mission Impossible 2. Now, interestingly as well, they wanted Russell Crowe for the role and they offered him the part, but he turned it down. He was like, I don't want this, but you should talk to my guy, fellow Australian Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman, as I mentioned, hadn't really been in much before this, but man, this guy is synonymous with this role as any actor is with any role in all of film, right, Mike?
it would really be hard to find someone better in this role, I think. And it's not just because we've seen him in the role for so long. You know, how many times has he played Wolverine? Is it like 8 times, 9 times,
10.
something
He's
like
well, including cameos, it's 10, but yeah,
that?
about
Okay.
7 full-on performances.
Granted, we don't really know any better because we haven't seen what they're going to do next in the multiverse MCU saga, whatever they're going to do. But I mean, come on, he does the growl, the roar that he does every time he brings the claws out and attacks somebody, and he embodies the spirit of the character so well. Is the thing. It doesn't matter that he's not 5'3" like he's supposed to be. It's just he can go into that berserker mode so well, and he's incredibly ripped. Less so in this movie. He's got
Noticeably, actually.
he's
Yeah.
noticeably he's got some bulking up to do. He's definitely a little baby faced in this movie, but that's okay. Right out the gate, it's just like he's doing a great job. He's nailing the lines. You know, he looks great with the sideburns and the cigar and the Ace Ventura Equensuocha hair. You know, So yeah, I mean, I can't think of a better fit off the top of my head, especially during this time, mid 2000s. Russell Crowe might have been good. I don't know. I can kind of see that.
I could see it a little bit. I'm not going to say it's the reason why X-Men became X-Men, but like he is absolutely iconic in this part, and he is the center of this movie. He's the center of a lot of movies from here on out. It's just hard to imagine, as you alluded to, someday they're going to recast for the new X-Men. It'd just be really hard to see anyone else besides him
I
in that
mean, we're
part.
not going to get an X Men movie starring Cyclops. Like you
Probably
said
not.
earlier,
Maybe,
he's
but
nobody's
probably not.
favorite.
No,
Much respect
no.
to James Marsden. I love that guy. Yeah, Cyclops is just not the heart of X Men. Even in the TV show, it's Wolverine. He's so tender despite being a little beast of his own.
I think that's well said. And there's just something about the gruffness combined with the sensitivity and the hurt and the
Yeah,
woundedness that just makes Wolverine one of the great superhero characters of all time, I would say. Certainly in my personal top 10, if not top 5. So
100%, 100%.
now, after X-Men was released, Mike, this film was a hit, but not like a smash hit. It made $296 million dollars at the box office. It was one of the top films of 2000, but one of the interesting things about the X-Men franchise is that each subsequent film went on to make more money. So they, started strong and just got stronger, which is the opposite, right, of what happened with both Batman and Superman, where it was kind of diminishing returns. There's just clearly something about this that really like struck a chord that made people want to come back. And again, I think that ensemble nature of these films just makes it a lot easier to continue the story because certain characters can die or get killed off or not appear in this one, and then it's okay. We'll go back. We'll reset. The choice they made to go back to a period setting for X-Men First Class, kind of changed things up there too. But I just think the nature of these movies and having a whole bunch of different people kind of allows them to keep going in ways that just don't feel as forced as, oh wow, Spider-Man's back again for, another time, the same guy, or Robert Downey Jr., they had to kill him off in the MCU. So yeah, I think that's part of it too. But it is interesting to me that the first 3 X-Men movies, each one was more successful than the last. All right, well, with that out of the way, let's get into our next category, best action scene. As we mentioned, this is not as many as you might expect from a superhero film, but kind of here's what I got for the quick ones. The opening Wolverine King of the Cage match / his bar fight with the bigoted, bitter guy who he beat down.
Stupid Canadians.
Well, no, right? Next up is Sabretooth sabotage when Sabretooth attacks the car, gets to scrapping with Wolverine trying to kidnap one of them. Next up is, it's not really an action scene, but it's worth kind of calling out the Logan's worst nightmare where he is having the bad dream and wakes up and stabs Rogue through her chest. And then she has to use her powers to take his healing ability and give it back to herself. Really clever stuff there. Next is the terror at the train station when Rogue has disappeared from Xavier's School for the Gifted and is going to head on a train, and the Brotherhood of Mutants attack. Next up is the lobby of the Liberty battle. We'll kind of split those into two, right? When they fight down in the lobby before the final action scene, the battle for Lady Liberty is what we're calling it. The big climactic showdown where Magneto's trying to, I don't think they really name the machine that he uses, but
No, they don't.
trying to turn all of the world leaders into mutants. Mike, which of these action scenes was your favorite?
I think the climax of the film is kind of the high point of the action scene. Things start cooking there. We get, as I mentioned, a good display of Magneto's powers and what he can do with flipping cop cars and pointing guns back at the cops, and some fun battles between Wolverine and Magneto, Wolverine and Sabretooth. Surprisingly hasn't aged that badly. Shot of Wolverine flipping around the crown of Lady Liberty's head there. Still kind of held up a little bit. I thought it wasn't bad. Everything kind of culminates at the climax of the movie there, and I think it works well, and that's where I was having the most fun in the movie. That's where I'm going to go for my best action scene.
Yeah, I like how Magneto too just pins him in these vulnerable positions where Wolverine's, hands are in his own chest, and Cyclops would have to blast Jean Grey in the face if he opens his eyes. Like Well done, Magneto. That's very villainous.
As you said, a great use of power combination in this movie. Of like Jean Grey has to hold the visor telepathically in front of Cyclops' head so that he can shoot the beam. Like it's a great use of combining everybody's and all their different unique abilities to kind of solve the problem of the scene.
With that said, I'm going to go with Terror at the train station. You know, this is such a cool scene because, first off, Toad using his gross tongue to rip off Cyclops' visor, who immediately just blasts the roof off the train station. Really cool stuff there. And the ending, right, where they go outside and the cops are all there ready to take him out, and he just uses his powers to just turn the guns right around on them. And then Professor X steps in, possesses the mind of Sabretooth, and starts choking him out.
And
I
Toad,
mean,
yeah.
and Toad, like, just such a cool use of everybody's powers in that moment. That is just such a great way to show just how dangerous that Magneto is in terms of his abilities, that like guns don't mean anything to him. They're all metal. It's fine. And when he pulls the trigger and the bullet is kind of digging into the cop's forehead a little bit, and it's like all he's got to do is just let it go and he's done for. I mean, this is really, really good stuff. I think Bryan Singer excels at showing the powers in the coolest ways possible. I thought that scene really, really typified. So I'm gonna go with Terror at the train station. A couple other just notable scenes in the movie I really enjoyed. The opening scene, just humanizing Magneto through his Holocaust trauma, I thought was really good, and it cuts straight into Rogue's own little traumatic incident. That's like genuinely pretty horrifying, Mike. It's already like the most vulnerable and awkward position that most of us have been in our lives, like trying to go for our first kiss and make out with the person we like, and then all of a sudden they fall into a coma for 3 weeks because you kissed them. This is like truly upsetting stuff, and really difficult origin story for Rogue.
She needs therapy after that one for sure.
You know, the congressional hearing does a great job of kind of setting up the world and the stakes of humans are mistrustful and scared. They don't want their kids to be around, you know, mutant teachers. I just think that was a very well executed way to show tension between humanity and the, you know, mutant threat, as they call it. Really enjoyed Wolverine just getting a tour of the mansion when he first wakes up and
It's a
doesn't
good
really
scene.
understand what's going on. And then Professor X just kind of explaining this is what we do here and it's a school. I like that it's like he's just teaching them physics, you know, mundane high school stuff. And then welcome to Mutant High. That's a good line from our guy Bobby Drake there. And then the last one I really want to shout out is the Senator Kelly kidnapping slash God-fearing man speech, man. That God-fearing man speech is an absolute banger when he said, I've never understood that phrase. I've always thought of God as someone you look to learn from, and it's not God you should fear, it's us, and you know, now you're going to be one of us. I mean, it's such a great speech, and Ian McKellen is just cooking in that scene.
It's a good back and forth between those two characters. It's well written dialogue, and you put Ian McKellen in a scene, he's going to do some great work. I mean, come on, man.
Let's talk quickly about Death and Destruction, Mike. Our next category. Pretty minimal in this film. I did clock a few specific deaths. So
Okay.
they do, Magneto says specifically, Henry Girish, I think is how you say his name. This is the assistant to Senator Kelly, and he's like, he's been dead for some time.
Yep.
Now, one
Okay.
thing I noticed on rewatch is at the very end of the movie, there's like a TV in the background, and they say, the body of Henry Girish was discovered today, and it appears he was mauled by a bear. So that was kind of a cool way to kind of connect that little thing. So there's our first death. Senator Robert Kelly himself
Yep.
dies. He turns into a puddle. Pretty horrifying. Now there's some kind of shaky CGI in that scene. It was a little difficult with water. I think the worst CGI in the entire movie is the opening. You get this sort of prologue with Professor X, like evolution, you know, sometimes jumps around, and it goes into this just really bad 2000s, like, I don't know if it's DNA sequence or whatever they're trying to do, but it looks
Yeah.
like that 2000s CGI. It's
It was
not
definitely of
great.
the time. Spider-Man did the same thing with all the spider webs kind of flying in and out of frame, and then I think even Daredevil did that as
Yeah,
well. So definitely of the time.
yeah, of the time. But
It's forgivable.
yeah, so Senator Kelly dies. Now the boat captain at Ellis Island also, they have a very clever shot where you see him piloting the boat, then the camera pans down to the floor, you see the real guy dead on the floor, and then it pans back to the steering wheel, and now it's Mystique. It was a cool little shot. So we got 3 there. Now, I'm going to assume at least a couple people died when the roof collapsed at the train station. I mean, roof
Same.
collapses, that's going to kill a couple people minimum, but probably not like a mass casualty incident, right? So I'm going to go with maybe about a half a dozen, right? You got 3 confirmed, and we'll go with 3 potentially. It sounds about right. So not a particularly brutal or bloody film. Not certainly not like the Joker's attack on Gotham City that left scores dead.
That's right, and I know that Wolverine specifically does not kill anybody in this film, as opposed to later films, because I know he does kill people later, which we'll get into when we get those movies going. But yeah, I think half a dozen sounds right to me. Nobody dies in the Ellis Island giant CGI net that's spread over or anything like that. So none of the bad guys die. Yeah, I think we're good. Half a dozen. That sounds right.
Next category, directing and writing. We've kind of talked about this already. Bryan Singer, I think, does an excellent job in this film. He really humanizes the stakes. The pacing is really good. It's not slow. It never really drags. I was actually kind of surprised by how fast it moved. But they also take time to really try to give these characters some development. And as we mentioned, kind of putting them in situations where their powers can be used to cool creative effect. I also really like the filmmaking choices in terms of how they show some of the power sets. So, for instance, when Professor X reads the mind of Senator Kelly to see what Magneto's scheme is, they show him in his wheelchair and then he just stands up and starts walking around. And it's like, oh, wow, yeah, I guess in his visions, right, he can still use his legs. He's not like confined to a wheelchair since it's not reality. That was just a really striking image to see him stand up out of the chair in the telepathic communication that he's doing. So those little choices, I think, are kind of apparent throughout. I think he did an excellent job directing this movie.
It's a little off-putting at first. You're like, "Well, wait, what's going on? Like, why can he stand and walk?" But yeah, once you connect that dot that he's in his mind, then it's like it totally makes sense.
And in terms of the script, I know a lot of people worked on it. God bless them all, because I think it's a really solid script too. Again, we've talked about the character development, but I also thought like one thing that's really clever again on rewatch, there's a whole kind of thing about, oh, like we were attacked in the car, and then Wolverine is having the conversation with Rogue trying to get her to go back to the X Mansion. Everyone, including the audience, just assumes, oh, he's the target. Magneto's like, I never said I wanted you. And then just like throws him to the back of the train and goes after Rogue. And it's like, oh yeah, that it was actually Rogue was the target the whole time. Just did a good job of kind of wrong footing you into assuming that Wolverine, because he is kind of the lead X-Man, that he's the one that they're after, but it was Rogue all along. I thought that was very clever in the script too. Next category, costumes, gadgets, and secret identities. So they don't really have secret identities. It was just one kind of interesting
They
thing
have
about,
code names. That's about it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like when Senator Kelly shows up at the X Mansion, he's like, give me Jean Grey. Like he knows that she's there. She's not really trying to hide. Same with Professor X. Like he seems to be a public figure as well. Wolverine doesn't really like being exposed that he's a mutant, and there's some hiding there. But yeah, it's a real departure from Batman and Superman, where their secret identities are really intrinsic to the characters. The X-Men are kind of out in the open here. So in terms of gadgets, I mean, the winner's got to be the X-Wing, right? Like the plane is super sick. What does he say? It's like flies it faster than any plane known to man. I mean, that would imply that Forge exists in the X-Men universe somewhere already, that like they have some kind of technological genius that could build a plane that fast, or I don't know. That's my theory. Forge is sort of implied. I don't know. What's your favorite gadget?
He's not a part of these movies, unfortunately, and it's called the Blackbird. Come on, get it right.
Did I call it the X-Wing?
You did, yeah.
X-Wing is a Star Wars reference. Damn it. The Blackbird. My bad. My bad. The Blackbird. Yeah.
No, the Blackbird is sick. I would say maybe runner up is probably Cerebro. Pretty impressive giant round room, as Wolverine comments. A
Yeah.
psychic amplifier, that's something that can make the most powerful psychic mutant on Earth even more powerful. Like that's pretty sick.
I'm saving Cerebro for another film that we'll get to
Okay.
soon enough. So, lastly, this was quite controversial at the time, so we've got to litigate it here. The all black leather costumes. Now, famously, Bryan Singer did not want to put them in their comic accurate outfits. I can kind of understand why to an extent, because the colors are quite bright. They're just such specific looks. Like Storm has a really specific look too. The yellow is just really bright and maybe kind of clash with the overall aesthetic tone of the film. That being said, like these are just really basic black jumpsuits. I don't understand even why they feel a need to be like we've all got to be in the same similar outfits. Like the fact that the script in Wolverine like makes a joke about it in the movie itself kind of undercuts what they're doing there as well. Like if you're gonna do it, like commit to it. Having him comment on it, and then what Cyclops makes like a crack, like, oh, what would you prefer, like yellow speedo or something like that,
Yellow
and
spandex, yeah.
yeah, yellow spandex. I mean, not great. I don't know. Didn't love the black leather. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's terrible. And James Marsden was even on record. Apparently, there was like a 2 foot high ledge that the cast had to jump over, and they couldn't do it because this black leather ensemble were so, stiff and restricting that he was like, it's really hard to feel like a superhero in this costume because we can't do anything in these fucking things. So yeah, it's not great, and I completely disagree with Singer on this point. You should have done something closer to the comic accurate costumes.
It's almost to the point of infamous how not great it is. So we won't see a whole lot of the all black leather moving forward. Let's put it that way. Secret layers, our next category. Now, Magneto's secret lair on the island is like pretty blah. It's just kind of cold and wet and like sort of looks like a villainous lair. Pretty generic, but I think the X Mansion is one of the coolest locations in all of Marvel. The fact that it's like a school on top and then has the danger room below, Cerebro below, all these cool little secret hideaways, secret passages. It's just one of the best locations, I think, in all of Marvel comics and certainly in all of Marvel films. And I think that this version of it, like, it looks great. It looks really cool. The school itself is clearly like really nice. I mean, but it also looks like a school. It's hard to kind of find a location that looks like it's both a school and a house and a mansion and a secret training ground for superpowered mutants. Well done. I absolutely love the X Mansion. What are your thoughts?
No, the mansion takes the cake. It's the best location in the movie. Where is it supposed to be? Upstate New York somewhere? Something like that?
Westchester, New York. Yeah.
Westchester, yeah. The basketball court opens up to allow the Blackbird to leave. That's fucking sick on its own. Yeah, if you were to house dozens of mutants and try and teach them as a school, I mean, this is a great location for them to be there. And yeah, all the sub levels below that have all these amazing things for training mutants below that is just it's great. They did a great job of capturing that, especially from what the comics were showing. It's a great adaptation of that.
Next category, we've got a new one for this season. Evil schemes. How effective is the evil scheme at the center of the villain's plot? And I would say in this movie, it scores quite high. I actually kind of admire what Magneto was going for here. His whole thing is you guys hate and fear us. So what if we turn all of the most powerful people in the world into us? Now you'll have no choice but to accept us because these are your leaders, and mutants will finally achieve. Well, he's a mutant supremacist, so he like
He
believes
is.
that we're actually better than the humans. So maybe his bigger plan is, hey, if we turn all the world leaders into superpowered mutants, then we will for sure have control of the world because all the people that you elected to government office are one of us now, and we can put you in your place, humanity. But I actually think it's a pretty clever scheme. And on top of that, oh, okay, it just sucks his powers dry when he runs the machine himself. So guess what? Let's get the person that can absorb my abilities to take my powers from me. We'll force her to run the machine instead of me, and it'll kill her instead of me. Like, clever thinking, I gotta say. Now, doing it from the Statue of Liberty itself is maybe a little on the nose, a little heavy-handed in terms of the metaphor, where it's like, this place was never a land of tolerance, and I'm gonna use Lady Liberty to create a whole new empire for mutant kind. It's a little on the nose there, but overall, I actually thought this evil scheme was quite clever. What were your thoughts?
I think in retrospect, this sets the stage for the evil supervillain plan of I'm going to get on top of a national landmark and then have have something that like covers an entire city or an entire area
The
to make
sky beam.
everybody like me. And I'm specifically calling out the Lizard and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, where he goes to the top of the Empire State Building and is like trying to make everybody lizards. It's the same thing. He's trying to make everybody nearby mutants, right? This sets the stage for that stereotype. Number two, this is a bad plan. How does he know that all the world leaders aren't also just going to turn to liquid and die the same way that Senator Kelly did?
Well,
Like,
he didn't know that until they told him at the very last minute, like, no, he's dead. He
yeah.
died.
So his plan has not been perfected. And so there's a big hole in his scheme, and he decides to go through with it anyway. And
It's a fair point.
I didn't really understand why he needed Rogue, and like you describing it just then of that they need her to absorb his powers to keep the machine running, and it's going to drain her instead of him. Okay, fine. I don't understand how they knew who Rogue was. I don't understand how they knew what her powers were, where she was. There was nothing that indicated that they were like hunting her down until the plot reveal that, oh, we're actually looking for Rogue instead of Wolverine. Like none of that made any sense throughout the entire course of the movie to me.
You jumped the gun on some I've got questions there,
I know I
Mike, because
did, but
that
we
sounds a
dove into
little
it. So.
that sounds a little I've got questionsy, but you're not wrong, but also you're not right. Let's leave it at that, because I think my opinion is the correct one. It was a good plan, Mike. It's
Wow.
a good
Okay.
plan. Next category, bad guy. This is the worst supporting character, the one that we struggled with the most. Mike, why don't you kick us off?
Anna Paquin. She's terrible in this role.
I
She's
had a feeling.
completely.
I had a feeling you were going to go there.
Her facial expression is completely one note all the way through. Her accent, I know, is apparently reprised in True Blood, so she gets some practice here, but it's not perfected here. It's really bad here, in fact. I don't know. She doesn't really work for me in this role, so I'm going Anna Paquin.
Mike, how dare you? Anna Paquin is an Oscar-winning actress.
Oh
Okay,
God.
she won the Academy Award. At the age of 11, the second youngest Oscar winner ever. Yeah,
She
okay, all
stopped
right.
trying after the age of 11.
To be fair, you're not totally wrong. That being said,
I'm
I
not totally
think
right.
I think the thing about her in this is that she is kind of one note, but that note is highly effective in terms of I don't really understand what's happening to me, because as much as anything, right? Being a mutant and all that, that parallels the confusion and fear that kids go through when they reach puberty, right? What's happening in my body? I don't like what I am now. This is weird. I feel awkward in my own skin. She sells all of that. I mean, that opening scene, it's a little over the top. She's like, "Get away from me," and like just
Yeah.
screaming in the corner. It's a little over the top. I'm not going to deny it. But again, I actually think that there is a level of realism to her reactions, even if they are a bit repetitive. I'm not going to say that like she was my favorite part of this movie, but I didn't really mind her. She was like solid. She did what she needed to do. For me, and this is nothing against the performer or anything, it's simply the actual mechanics of the film itself. It's Marsden and Cyclops, man. They don't give him really
Oh
anything to
man,
do in this movie. Now,
he did it.
I really enjoy Marsden as an actor. This was my first time ever seeing him, and I was just like, "Who is this
Yeah.
guy? He sucks." Like, there's nothing really interesting about his character. He's only there to be in opposition of Wolverine. He does get off a couple good lines in terms of "stay away from my girl," that whole thing. But
Yellow
like in
spandex.
yeah, like in general, like I felt like they needed a scene where it's just him and Professor X is kind of telling him like, "Look, you're my guy. You've been chosen as the leader of this team. These are the reasons why. You have this characteristic, you have this trait, right?" Just one more scene where they kind of establish his bona fides as the like leader of the X-Men. It's also tough for him because we talked about this on previous episode. Marsden has really expressive eyes, and because his eyes are covered up with the visor, you don't really get a sense that he's very good in this film because you can't really see what he's doing. He's really good at acting with his eyes. He's a really handsome guy, and I just kind of struggle with the character in this film and the way that he's conceived. That was kind of my takeaway.
It's funny you mentioned that because apparently there is a deleted scene where Professor X and Cyclops are talking about Wolverine specifically, and Cyclops is like, "This is not the guy that we need. He's not going to follow orders. He's not a part of the team." And Professor X is like, maybe you should give him an order worth following. And so it kind of gives him
Mm.
more of a reason to be a leader to Wolverine behind that. But I guess it doesn't really go anywhere in the context of the rest of the movie. He never really tells Wolverine what to do or gives him anything important to do. So I can see why they cut it, but he's fine in the role for what they give him to do, but he does get worse
Yeah.
in the following subsequent movies. So, but
Yeah, we'll hash it out there because you're not totally wrong, but they needed more from Cyclops than just you're the guy that Wolverine hates. And that was really what his role was in this movie. Now let's talk about our good guy, our favorite supporting character, and more specifically, since this is an ensemble film, I think to the point, Mike, which mutant wins the movie for you?
it's Patrick Stewart for me. I think he's so perfectly cast in this role. He's like going into a superhero movie and knowing who Professor X is in advance, and then seeing Patrick Stewart as Professor X is like, I have not seen anybody be so incredibly cast to this point in my life. And like Christopher Reeves is amazing as Superman. We've got some mid to good Batman up to this point, but we've never had perfect casting. And he is absolutely perfect in this role. He brings the gravitas, he brings the wisdom, he looks the part specifically physically. He's just like, how did they do this? Like, it's like he was born to play the role, man. Like, you can't get any better. His powers are incredible. He's the most powerful psychic mutant on the planet, and we see why with him like freezing time, taking control of people, talking to Magneto in that respect. Like he's the best part of the movie in my opinion.
Wow. Okay. I applaud that. I'm not going to argue that one. I really like him. That being said, and it is fitting given our intro, I'm going with Ian McKellen as Magneto. I
Great.
think
Also great.
that it's so difficult to do a villain who is sympathetic in some ways and whose mission and whose, ideology, even philosophy is legible and understandable and maybe even sympathetic. I think as the comics have shown over the years, Magneto is kind of vacillated between good and bad, right? And he kind of comes around to be the leader of the X-Men even at one point. So to have such a complex character, you need a really talented actor who can pull all of that off. And it's Ian McKellen. He gives a couple different great speeches, like I mentioned, the one to Senator Kelly and the God-fearing one, as well as when he's got Rogue and he's like, yeah, I saw this for the first time in 1949, the Statue of Liberty. I thought it was going to be the land of tolerance. And guess what? It's not. And now I got to make some sacrifices. I don't want to kill you, but we're in a war and war demands sacrifice. And so sorry about that, but I wish it didn't have to be this way. I mean, he's just so good at conveying that. So for me, I'm going with Magneto. Now, this leads to a very important nerd question here, Mike. I think
Okay.
these two actors are both known for two very specific sci-fi fantasy roles.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got Patrick Stewart as both Professor X as well as Jean-Luc Picard from Star
Yes.
Trek Next Generation, Ian McKellen, obviously Magneto, and then of course Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. So the question is, which of those iconic characters do you associate most with each of those actors?
Gandalf.
Ian McKellen,
For
Gandalf
Yeah, for sure.
over Magneto?
100%.
Yeah, that's right. That's the correct answer. In fact, I almost forget that he's Magneto because he's so good as Gandalf. It's like that will always be his signature role, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
he's incredible as Gandalf.
yeah,
Like, it's a travesty that he wasn't nominated for Fellowship.
boy, preach it.
Like, what a Lord of the Rings fan guy that I that I am. Like,
I
I
knew the answer before I asked, but
you already knew. Like,
yeah.
I I'm not going to bore our listeners and go off on a 30-minute monologue about Ian McKellen as Gandalf. Like, he's come on, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. He's incredible.
Apparently, he's coming back too for the new Lord of the Rings movie
I
they're
don't.
working on.
Yeah, I don't care about that. But keep going.
What about Patrick Stewart, Jean-Luc Picard, or Professor X?
To me, he's Professor X because I'm not much of a Star Trek guy. I have tried to be a Star Trek guy. I've actually watched season 1 of TNG, and while I understand that he's good in the role and he's a respectful character, like he's a good leader. I understand why he's a good leader. He's a learned, individual, and he's tolerant of other species and cultures and things like that. And he executes the prime directive well and all that, bullshit Star Trek stuff. But I associate him more, as I said, perfectly cast as Professor X. So I feel like you could probably put someone else in the role of Jean-Luc Picard if you really wanted to. If you found someone as good of an actor, maybe, or just someone who, there's nothing specifically about Jean-Luc Picard that's like, we need a bald guy who's slightly British, maybe not ambiguously British, to be in this role. But like, he's perfect as
Yeah.
Professor X. I can't say it enough. He's perfect. So
Yeah.
to me, he would just always be Professor X more than Jean-Luc.
Yeah, I agree. Similar things on Star Trek. I mean, I'm not a Trekkie by any means, but I did watch a lot of Next Generation when I was growing up, and he really does anchor that show. He holds it all together, and I think part of what makes him really compelling on that show is that he's not William Shatner, the like handsome,
Yeah.
look at me, like he has a different, more analytical approach as captain, but he still displays great bravery and courage and intellect and cunning, all the things you want out of a good Star Trek captain. Certainly, I think most Americans, I'm going to say, introduction to Patrick Stewart was through that. So I can see people who would be like, he's Jean-Luc Picard and then Professor X. But for
Yeah, for
me, yeah,
sure.
I'm with you. Definitely agree. He's a Professor X. This leads us to our next category. A lot of people's favorite category. I've got questions.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
Questions. Questions that need answering.
Too many questions. There's too many questions. There's just too many. I'll ask the questions.
We love these movies. We've praised X-Men plenty, but that didn't mean that we don't have some questions about certain story choices and or characters. Mike, why don't you kick us off? What's your first question?
I waxed poetic about, how did Magneto know about Rogue? How did you learn about her? Why was he after? Okay, so we'll just start there. He's apparently targeting her as early as the Canadian snow fight scene. How does he know about her? How does he know that she's the one that he needs for his plan?
This is a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, he doesn't have Cerebro. He's not
Right.
like scanning the world for mutants. My assumption, and this is maybe a stretch, but I'm just spitballing here. The fight at the bar where an unknown guy disappeared with a young woman. But again, how would he know that she has this specific type of
Yeah,
power set?
she doesn't show her powers there. She's
Yeah.
used her powers one time as a teenager in private and then went on the run after
Yeah.
that
My
and has
my
been like hiding in people's, trailers. So
Yeah, and I guess I was gonna say maybe Mystique was undercover as one of the students, as she does, but then the snow fight happens before she's at the school for
exactly.
gifted mutants. So, yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. For my first question, it's pretty straightforward. When Magneto bends Wolverine's claws, how's he able to just straighten them all out? Like, how's that work? They just got bent sideways twice in the movie. They get bent all weird. Now, if you've ever bent metal before, like, I guess you can kind of bend it back, but like, it's pretty tough to just straighten out metal, and much less the hardest metal known to man in adamantium, or I guess the second hardest after vibranium. But yeah, just kind of, I don't know. It's just a little confusing. How does that happen that he's able to straighten those out?
I just kind of inherently assumed because it's adamantium and because it is the strongest metal in the world, it has a very high tension point, and so it's being bent, yes, but as Magneto stops, it just like inherently has
It's
its
able to
tension.
like
It's
bend.
yeah,
Yeah.
because of its high tension point, it can snap back into its own place. Basically,
Okay. All right.
that's
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe I'm
I
reaching,
like
but
it.
that's how I felt about it.
No, I like it. I like that you solved it. Let's go. What's your
All
next
right.
one?
Jean Grey assumes that it is safe to put Wolverine into an MRI machine. He has metal inside of him everywhere.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. It's a great point. That MRI machine is cooked. And he's probably cooked. I don't know who gets cooked worse. The machine
and everything
breakdown
around
or
him is
him.
cooked.
Yeah.
Like,
The
yeah,
entire
the whole
school's burning
thing.
down. Yeah, you're totally right. That's a massive oversight on the
What
part
the
of
fuck, Jean Grey?
Yeah, come on, Jean Grey. Get it together. I got a question about Mystique and her shape-shifting abilities. Okay. So she can imitate the Statue of Liberty,
Oh, that
but
was weird. Yeah.
so she can actually go as like not human objects. And then on top of that, she is naked. God bless them for that choice, but they just made the choice to just have her running around naked with just scales over certain parts of her bodies. That opens up a whole host of questions, actually, but we won't get into those because it's a family podcast. But that means she can actually make fabric as well, like 'cause she puts on clothes of people when she's
Oh,
imitating
well,
them.
every
She
time,
uses
yeah.
Wolverine's claws. She gets the claws. Now he does break her claws like quite easily. So those are part of her, and she like yelps when he does it. So like that is
Yes.
part of her like physical, but there's just a lot of questions around like Mystique's power set and like how that all works for me. Like I said, to not even get into the more adult versions of that as well.
The Statue of Liberty thing was weird, but I don't really question too hard her taking the shape of a person with clothing or specifically claws or things like that. That's just like, all right, well, she's just like assuming all of their physical form,
Yeah, I don't
So
know. I feel like if you're gonna do it, you can take their body, but you can't take their clothes. Like you just can just conjure clothes as part of your mutant power. Like I don't know. I got questions, Mike. I got
okay,
questions.
all right. My last one: when Jean Grey goes and puts on Cerebro to use it herself because the professor is indisposed. After she's done, she comes out and says that I know where Magneto is going. So Cerebro, it can tell her the future. It can tell her where a person is gonna end up being.
I'm gonna
Because I had always
assume.
thought that like it just shows you where people are,
Yeah,
basically.
but I'm gonna assume that like she saw Toad, and then at that moment they were discussing the plan, and so that's where she
Okay,
got that
well,
information from. But yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it's a
but I'm
fair.
not right.
Yeah, no, you're about halfway between right and wrong on this one. So
Okay.
that's a fair point. All right, my last question is simple. Where does Professor X get all his money? He's got a huge mansion, a sick
Yeah.
house. Now, I actually think I can answer this question. And the answer is because he's a telepath that can, he says, make people do what he wants. He just goes in the minds of rich people and is like, you're going to write a check to the Xavier Academy
Well,
for
wait a
$5
minute.
million. You're going to buy a fleet of sports cars to put into this garage, rich person. Like, probably targets crappy rich people, that are just
So his
assholes.
moral
And
code is completely skewed at this point.
I'm just saying, where's the money, Mike? Where's it come from? What's he
I think
doing?
they do explain it in either First Class or Days of Future Past, but like
His
the,
family
the
was rich, maybe?
yeah, the mansion's inherited. I don't remember how his family like made their money specifically, but he's got generational wealth for sure. So
I don't know, man. I think I'm going to go with I mean, he has generational wealth, sure, but you have enough wealth to fill a whole garage with sick, sports cars and the nicest everything. Like, it seems like he has unlimited money, and they never really explain that. So, I don't know. That's what I'm going with. All right, this leads us to our next category. What is it really all about? And I think this is a pretty obvious one, Mike. I'll let you chime in with your thoughts too. But to me, X-Men was created, if not explicitly as a comment on the civil rights, which is up to some debate because I think the timelines don't totally match up. The idea that Professor X is just simply an analog for Martin Luther King and Magneto is Malcolm X. They don't totally align perfectly, but clearly this was the 60s when it came out, and it does stand in as a metaphor for tolerance, bigotry, fear of the other. It's not even subtext, right? Like, it's on the text of the movie. It's right there. So what is the bigger theme even beyond that, right? To me, it's something I've been thinking about a lot, Mike. And the answer to that question is grace. It's about grace. and that the X-Men will protect the world that fears and hates them. That is their explicit mission. It is about loving your enemy, loving the people that hate you. Not only being like, hey, we're going to just try to get along, but no, we will actively save you in this situation, in which might actually benefit us, right? Where you become mutants and now we can all be into this together because you're one of us now. Nah, we're going to actually protect you from those threats. And again, the comics, it gets really muddled, and understandably so, because it's comic books. A, they need to have continuous conflict. But B, it's not so simple. It's not as clean and easy. And it's a really complicated thing. And it's a really hard idea to live by, to love your enemy. I feel it's not breaking news. This is a very divided time in our nation of America. People think, oh, you don't have my same politics. I hate you. The president is a very divisive figure. People don't like him. He doesn't like a lot of people. He says he doesn't like a lot of people. He uses bad language about those people. People use bad language about him. It is so divided, Mike. And the idea of, you know what? You said horrible things about me, and I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to protect you and fight for you. That is incredible ethic to strive for. It's something that I found really inspiring, and I think actually makes this movie and makes the X-Men series what it is. It really hit me watching this. It's really all about grace, and I find it actually really moving. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that this film is like super deep and like gets into that level. I think future X-Men movies actually get a little more into that, but yeah, it's really about grace and loving your enemy. And I think that's an ethic that, and a theme that resonates really strongly to me in the year of 2025.
That's right. And I think that we can specifically call out our friends at the Batman Animated Podcast. You know, we may not agree with everything that you guys say, but we will defend to the death your right to say it.
I just wish they'd clean up the language, Mike. You know, just clean it up, guys. You potty mouse. You know, I know you're British and you're known. I thought you were known for your elocution, and instead it's
Those
just
those
dirty.
Robson brothers,
Those
they're
Robsons.
just, you know.
Shout out to the Robsons. There we go. And now, Mike, it is time for our final verdict. So here on Superhero Cinema Club, we rate our superhero films on a scale of classic, great, good, okay, bad, and terrible. It's a 6-tiered scale. Mike, dying to hear, what are your final verdict for X-Men?
I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, probably 10 plus years. So when I rewatched it, I felt like I was pretty familiar with it, but there were definitely some holes in my memory of like, oh, I don't remember how we connect A to B or things like that. And it was kind of a slap in the face to see everybody so fresh and baby faced and young. And I felt a little old watching it this time, but that's okay. I still was thoroughly entertained, despite it not being a lot of action as it is comparatively to most modern superhero movies. I think it still moved pretty quickly, and I was engaged pretty much the whole time. I don't think there was like a wasted scene throughout the entire movie. So I think that it works really well, just not just as a superhero movie, but as a movie in general. And like you said, as an ensemble piece. And so because of all those things, I think that I'm gonna give it good.
Good. Okay. All
I know,
right.
good. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I think it's hard to make an argument that this is the best X-Men movie. There's definitely superior entries coming down the line for sure. With that being said, I'm kind of right on the border between good and great. And I think I'm going to give it great just because it sets the template of these characters that next movie, you know, subsequent films, we don't need to spend as much time on who is this person? What are they about? What are their motivations? I also, as we've alluded to, think it was hugely influential in terms of kind of making the tone that we're now familiar with in superhero films, which is to say a little bit more adult, a little bit more realistic. The computer animation and the CGI effects in the film, hugely influential, couldn't have been done before this year. And I think Bryan Singer is a really, really talented director when it comes to superhero films. I think he does a really good job of, as I mentioned, establishing scenarios in which these characters can use their powers in the coolest possible ways. And so it's not the highest tier for sure. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a classic necessarily, but It's a great movie in my opinion, and there's flaws. So I can see the good, and good's still good. So it's not like you're dissing the movie, but yeah, I'm gonna go a little higher. I'm gonna go with great.
Mark, if I may, I'd like to dive into some fun facts that I did not have an opportunity to talk about through the rest of the podcast.
Hit me.
Okay, so number one, did you know that this was the only X-Men movie that is not specifically based on a pre-written comic?
Interesting.
So
I did
like
not know that.
X-Men 3 is all about the mutant cure.
Dark Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix has the Phoenix Saga into it. X-Men 3 has the Phoenix Saga. Days of Future Past is obviously named for its own comic arc, Days of Future Past, things like that. This is the one that they just kind of compiled together as like, we just have these characters and we're going to write our own new comic arc for it. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Number two, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart had no idea how to play chess prior to this movie.
That is interesting. That's
so
funny.
they had to bring in a chess master to teach them how to play so that they actually looked like they knew what they were doing. I don't think that was necessary because all we see is Patrick Stewart moving a knight up into a check position. So I don't think all that was needed, but that's okay. Number three, Rebecca Romaine brought in a bottle of tequila on their last day of shooting, which the whole cast drank. And then the last day of shooting ended up being the fight scene that she has with Wolverine in Ellis Island. And so she ended up vomiting all over Hugh Jackman. But because of her body chemistry and the makeup that was on her, it was all blue vomit that came out of her.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
And then the last one I wanted to hit you with was that Hugh Jackman, when he heard that he was going to be playing a character named Wolverine, he was like, well, that has to be about wolves. So I'm going to learn as much about wolves as possible. And so he spent like a few weeks studying wolves until Bryan Singer was like, no, bro, that's a completely different animal. I don't know why you're doing
That's
this.
funny. Being an Australian, he never knew about Wolverines, and that they're a badger, or they're in the badger family.
Yeah, but aren't they from New Zealand? It's like a close area, or Tasmania, I guess.
Yeah, the Tasmanian devil is kind of like a Wolverine, I guess, but like
Yeah.
Wolverines are they're like angry badgers.
Yeah,
That's what a Wolverine is. So that's hilarious, though. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see why you would make that mistake, but great facts, good fun facts there, Mike. I love it. And now it's time for our final category: comic and film recommendations based on this film. Mike, why don't you kick us off?
All right, I'm going to start with my comic recommendation. So, because we're entering the X-Men universe and because we spoke so highly of the character of Magneto, there's a Magneto run. There was about 20 issues that happened in 2014 by the author Cullen Bunn, and kind of a take on Magneto as he's a little bit younger. He's probably about mid to late 30s approximately, but it's a little bit of a re-envisioning of the character, and he's still very much of the same mindset of mutant superiority and kind of fighting that underground fight that is trying to have the end of mutants, reigning supreme. But it's told from his perspective. It's told from kind of the anti-hero trope, and it's really well written. It's really well illustrated. The main cover is just like him with a shaved head, and there's like a barbed wire that is creating the Magneto helmet just kind of floating above his head. So it's kind of an origin, but not really. It's a re-envisioning kind of thing. Again, 2014 or so. You can find it on, Amazon or wherever. But 20 issues, and it was really good. I really enjoyed that read. So I think that's my comic recommendation for this film.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'm not familiar with that one. It sounds really cool. As for me, I'm going to go with a comic book series that was started by one of the alleged co-writers of X-Men, a man who we'll be discussing later in Superhero Cinema Club. And that would be Astonishing X-Men, written by Joss Whedon and drawn by John Cassaday. I love this series. I didn't read the entire run. He actually left, and then Warren Ellis took over, who's another comic book great. Yeah. But yeah, his sort of reestablishing of the X-Men in the wake of Jean Grey's like 20th death or whatever it was. The team features Cyclops, Wolverine, Beast, and then the White Queen, Emma Frost,
Yep.
and Kitty Pryde, who comes back to the X-Mention after being away for a while. I just think Whedon really understands how to write for these characters. He's been really good at writing for female characters. The dynamic between Emma Frost and Kitty Pryde is great. The mistrust that the various people have for one another is awesome. The way he writes for Wolverine, I think, is completely awesome. And, you know, the first storyline where there's a mutant cure and then it kind of involves Beast, where he's like, well, actually, that might be something I'm interested in, considering I'm this big furry beast, you know? It just really like does a good job of kind of capturing individual struggles within the X-Men, as well as how they can all kind of come together. And despite their differences, Whedon's just funny too. Like, he just has a lot of funny lines. It's really highly entertaining. It's beautifully drawn by John Cassaday. Yeah, I just really enjoyed Astonishing X-Men and went back and read some issues in preparation for the show, and I would highly recommend it. Definitely check out at least the volumes that Whedon did. Like I said, I haven't read the full run, but the early ones are great.
That's a great use of Kitty Pryde's powers too, especially towards the end of that first arc.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Oh man, that gets me emotional thinking about it right now. It's just, yeah, it's amazing. So
she's amazing. For my film recommendation, I'm going to go with something that I feel like has kind of been lost to time a little bit, even though it hasn't been that long, about 20 years. But when I see Hugh Jackman, I just have to always have this connection in my brain of 2006, The Fountain from Darren Aronofsky. One of my favorite movies of all time. I think this movie is absolutely just beautiful, beautifully shot, beautifully written, beautifully acted. It's kind of a strange film. Basically, it's three different stories that are kind of happening all in tangent of one another. It's a man trying to, he's a scientist, he's or a doctor, he's trying to cure his wife's cancer, but then there's also, he's a conquistador and he's trying to find the tree of life for his queen of Spain. And then there's the third story is a very metaphysical kind of version of his spirit and reaching a point in space and time that would achieve his own enlightenment kind of thing. And they all intersect between each other. And it's only about 90 minutes, surprisingly, despite what I'm talking about. You would think that that would be something that would be like 3 hours long today, but I think Darren Aronofsky found a great way to kind of compact this movie together. And it's just something that I will always love. It's got a special place in my heart, and I think it's just an amazing Hugh Jackman performance.
Mike, I love that you recommended that. I remember, in fact, how enthusiastic you were for that film when it came out, and you were just absolutely raving about it. I think you might be a little higher on it than I am, and I think you're completely right to talk about it. It does feel like it's kind of gotten lost to time a little bit. But yeah, it is a really original, great film, and Hugh Jackman playing three different roles has to do a whole lot and carries the whole film really capably. That's an excellent recommendation. For me, I'm going to go with a film that actually ties kind of astonishingly back towards the themes of the X-Men movie, also starring Hugh Jackman, and that would be the 2011 film adaptation of Les Miserables. Les Mis is one of the best known musicals of all time. It's one of my personal favorite musicals in terms of the songs and all of that. I kind of remember this film being somewhat mixed in the reviews when it came out. We just rewatched it the other night and it just left me in tears, man. I think, first of all, the story itself is one of the most moving pieces of literature. If you've never read the book, it's absolutely outstanding. Shout out to Victor Hugo.
My guy, shout out to my guy, Victor Hugo.
Shout out to my guy, Victor Hugo. I mean, Jean Valjean is genuinely, I think, one of the great protagonists in all of drama.
Yeah.
The way that his story starts as a convict who's spent 10 years in prison just for stealing a loaf of bread. He's led into a monastery, but I guess it would be a monastery.
Priest,
yeah. And he is forced to steal a bunch of silver and gets caught. And then the cops return him. And here, you actually forgot the candlesticks as well. Like, all good, my friend, like on your way. And the grace that he receives from the priest catalyzes him to turn his life around. He assumes a new identity. He becomes mayor of this town, but he can never really escape the clutches of Javert, I mean, this is Les Mis. Like, if you haven't seen it, you should see it and definitely see Les Mis. Read the
Be
book
part of
first.
everyone's like education for sure.
Absolutely. I was really, really touched by this film, Mike. And again, you have a guy who is put into forced incarceration, who's angry and bitter, who meets a figure that offers him a second lease on life where he can become a heroic figure. Jean Valjean is Logan in Wolverine. I mean, there's incredible similarities between those characters. You could even go so far as to say his relationship to Cassette kind of mirrors his relationship to X-23 and stuff in Logan.
I thought you were going to say
and
Rogue a little bit.
Rogue as well. You know, he certainly has a paternal nurturing streak towards Rogue too. I don't want to sound too heavy-handed that like it's the same movie. They're very different. And it's not like without its flaws.
Colonel William Stryker is Javert.
Exactly. Kind of. But yeah, I would say that these movies pair very nicely to one another. And again, you know, it's a very compelling film. They had him sing live on set. And so all the vocals that you hear were actually done live. They weren't overdubbed in the studio. And that gives some really raw singing. And Russell Crowe, sometimes it's a little rough. But Anne Hathaway won Best Supporting Actress, Future Superhero Cinema Club star, for her performance as Fontaine, and her rendition of I Dreamt a Dream is just utterly devastating in that movie. I really enjoyed rewatching it, and I think it's like you said, it should be like in education classes and drama classes. Like, it is just one of the great musicals of all time, and the film adaptation is excellent.
I have not seen that particular version because I didn't want to hear Russell Crowe sing, but I've seen Les Mis live, and it was amazing. I've seen the 20th anniversary or whatever they did that was on HBO a while back. That was absolutely incredible. And the Liam Neeson version, which is not a musical but still a great adaptation of the story. I mean, yeah, come on, it's Les Mis, man. Like, it's one of the best stories ever written. So,
amen.
It's no surprise.
It's not quite X-Men good, but it's like it's good. So, on that note, we'll get you out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in to our season premiere. Man, Mike, I am fired up, bro. We are gonna get in. Let's go. Season 3, getting into the X-Men now. We're really starting to cook with superhero films. CGI has entered the chat. Let's go. Next week, we'll be covering X2. Boy, I'm excited for this one, Mike. So many thoughts. This is a big one.
It's not X-Men 2. It's X2.
Just X2. They didn't say X-Men 2. It's just called X2. We are super excited to discuss it. We hope you will join us again for another episode of Superhero Cinema Club.
Superhero Cinema Club is hosted by Mark Schiff and me, Mike Carnes. Produced by Mark Schiff. Editing by Mike Carnes. Original music provided by Chris Carnes. Find him on Spotify. Be sure to follow us on social media. You can find us at Superhero Cinema Club, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a review. Join us next time as we dive into another epic adventure from the world of superhero cinema.